Hi, I'm Lorraine Harrison, and I'd like to talk today about hot seating in the classroom and how you can use that to support reading and writing. I've got 6 different approaches to hot seating, and I've got a list here, so forgive me if I'll just occasionally have to look at my list to make sure I cover everything. Hot seating traditionally, it was meant as part of the drama process, but it's something that you can use in the classroom, of course. Traditionally, you ask a child to come out to the front of the class, sit on a chair known as the hot seat, and the children in the class ask questions of the child in character, and you take it from there. That's fine, that works great, but there can be some issues with that. One of the issues is that maybe the child doesn't have enough information, or maybe the children haven't been prepared sufficiently for the questions. So here are some other ways in which you can use hot seating, if you like. One is to, rather than have one child in the hot seat as the character, you can have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 even children out the front in role as the same character. I wouldn't have thought this was possible, but I was once teaching a class of year 2 children, and I asked them if any one of them wanted to be in the hot seat as the Iron Man, and 4 children put their hands up. I said, okay, fine. 4 of you will sit at the front, and you will be the voice of the Iron Man. And I asked them to put their hands up if they had an answer, and we had a little chat about not changing anything that the other person has said, and it seemed to work fine. So I was surprised, really, because I thought maybe year 2 couldn't grasp this concept, but they did. So you can get children, a group of children out the front, just being the voice of the character on that one, if you like. There's another way in which you can have a character. This is called like a circle. You can have a main character in the centre or in the front of the class, and the other children, some of them, maybe in pairs or in groups, are other characters in the same text. This is particularly good for if you're studying Shakespeare, for example. You have Romeo in the centre, and then round the edge you have all the other characters, including Juliet and the Caprios and the Montagues and all the rest of the minor characters. And your question is, Romeo, what do you think of Juliet? Juliet, what do you think of Romeo? Montagues, what do you think of Romeo? Romeo's, what do you think of Montagues? You have to state a specific point in the story, and of course, children need time to think ahead of what that character might think of each of the other characters. So that's particularly useful to do that as a kind of a circle, if you like. Another thing we can do is to allocate children characters as we are reading a story. And sometimes with younger ones, this can be puppets. So you have maybe a table of children or a group of children who are taking on the role of Daddy Bear, another one of Mummy Bear, another Baby Bear, and they have the puppets. And then whilst we're reading the story, I'll stop and I'll say, Daddy Bear, we're stopping at the point of the story where you have just seen Goldilocks lying in that bed. What are you thinking now? What are you feeling now? Anybody else like to ask Daddy Bear any questions? And so it goes on. And there's one child holding a puppet who manipulates the puppet and answers for the character. You don't have to have puppets, of course. You could do it, say the opening page of Goodnight, Mr. Tom. We're starting reading, and you stop and say, Billeting Officer, what are you feeling at this point? It keeps children on their toes, and it helps them concentrate whilst they're reading. So children can actually be hot seated at certain points whilst you're reading a text. Another one to do, and this is very powerful, is to use hot seating to teach, if you like. For example, if I wanted to teach about Lowry as a person, I start with something I call roll on the wall, and I do an outline of like a head and shoulders outline, which is Lowry, represents Lowry or whatever character it is, and I draw a line down the middle, or I have the inside and the outside. So in the inside, we write, what do we know about Lowry, both of his work and his paintings and as a person? And we write those in the centre. What do we think about Lowry? We put that around the edge of the outline. And then we find out what we need to know. And then the teacher would play the part of, I don't recommend you play the parts of the main characters, because obviously they might ask you questions to which you don't have the answers. So in this scenario, I played Lowry's housekeeper. I would know a lot of the answers, but not all of them. And I ask the children, I make a contract as a sign of role and say, when I put on this scarf, could I play the role of Lowry's housekeeper? And you can ask me the questions. So we prepare the children for the questions. We've already thought about what we need to know. And so I'm using my role, teacher in role, to pass on information about Lowry. And then after that, we look at the role on the wall again and we say, right, has that changed? Now what do we know inside the outline? So that's quite important. That's quite an effective way of teaching, to teach from a role, if you like. You don't have to do role in the wall beforehand. You could teach from a particular perspective. For example, it was dark inside the wolf. I didn't know when I would get out. I'm Red Riding Hood's granny, and they're going to be asking me questions about this. So you can get children to ask questions of characters from different perspectives, but you are actually in role as the teacher. So that's another way of doing that. Another way of doing it, another quite effective way, is to get half the class to hot seat the other half. I use these, this is really powerful, I think, for writing in role. I'll give you an example. We're looking at Matilda. Half of the class are reporters. They are going to report this incident when Matilda's house burnt down. And half the class are reporters, and they're going to be interviewing the other half of the class who are in role as Matilda's neighbours. So given time beforehand, Matilda's neighbours have to have time to think about what they know, what they've seen about the situation, and the reporters are working out questions about what they know. However, if this was Upper Key Stage 2, I'd be adding a bit of a twist to this, because newspapers are interesting. I could maybe put them into 3 groups, and I could give each newspaper a particular bias. Newspaper 1, you are going to be a sort of a newspaper that sticks up for people who are victims, who are in trouble, for the smaller person, for children and people in trouble. Newspaper 2, you like authority. You often stand up for people who are in charge, the parents and the aunties and the main fire brigade and things like this. Newspaper 3, you try to be fair. It's not easy, but you try to be fair and you try to get a balanced view. So they're coming at it with a bias, if you like. And then once they're given time to think about that, I pair them up so that you have maybe a couple of newspaper reporters asking questions of a few neighbours. And we get information like that, but the information is biased, if you like, in some cases. And then the newspapers write up their article in role as newspapers about Matilda. Some of them are going to be accusing Matilda of telling lies before, so it's not surprising that this happened. Some are going to be blaming the neighbours for ignoring her. The neighbours are going to have a different perspective on this. So they're going to write reports, and maybe the neighbours are going to be writing diaries and things about the incident like that. So you can do a lot of things about writing in role on that one. Children can hot seat in 3 groups. They can either be themselves, or they can hot seat as other characters, or they can hot seat as interested parties like investigators or reporters in that score. They can also ask questions spontaneously where there is no planning. You can give them time beforehand in 2s and 3s to work out their questions. You can, as a whole class, decide on the kind of questions that you ask, and then I advise that whatever you do, you allocate a couple of children to start the ball rolling. I've seen some teachers whereby they devise a couple of question cards, and they give out question cards, and the children ask according to what cards, or they give out the first 3 cards. And also think it's useful to have a signal and decide beforehand, are the children just going to call out the questions, or are they going to raise their hands? And if they raise their hands, who's deciding who's going to speak? Is it the character who chooses who asks them the question, or is it the teacher? So there's lots of different ways in which you can use hot seating. I'll just go through those briefly again. The child can come out the front as a character, as traditionally. A small group of children can be the character. They can form a circle whereby the one in the centre, you talk about the one in the centre and their relationship with the other characters and vice versa. We can give children roles as we read a text, and we can stop during the reading. We can use roll on the wall to prepare the questions. The teacher can be hot-seated as a form of providing information. We can have half the class interviewing the other half in role as interested parties like investigators or reporters, the other half as neighbours or friends or relatives or people who knew the character, if you like. Children can be in role as themselves, as other characters, interested parties. Time to plan is important unless you decide otherwise, and agree on a signal. So I hope that gives you kind of a flavour of hot seating. It is very powerful, and there are lots of ways of doing that. I'm hoping to put all that on my website very soon at larainesharrison.com. On the website, I have lots of other ideas for drama, along with information about my 2 novels, Red Snow and Angel's Child. So take a look at the website, larainesharrison.com, and I hope to be putting more ideas of theory of drama onto this YouTube in the near future. Thank you very much.